Good morning, students. We had seen last time, that is on Saturday, that how Buddhism got divided because after the death of Buddha, there was a division about the faith and the practices of Buddhism and the basic tenets of Buddhism among different followers of and the groups of different followers of Buddhism, because some of them were very, very puritanists who wanted nothing to do with the fact that that Buddha was a god or a messenger of God or anything like that. But then there was a certain and the majority rather set of people who believed that Buddha could not have been a normal human being, and naturally he was a messenger of God, and that is how and that is what was the reason of his unsurpassed greatness and his spiritual enlightenment. So that is how it was. That's how Buddhism got divided into you know the Hinayana and the Mahayana sect. But you have to understand one very important fact as well. Students, I have repeatedly been saying during this chapter that as long as Mahavira, Vardhaman Mahavira, and Gautam Buddha were alive, they never wanted anyone to consider them anything more than just a good teacher or even a teacher for that matter. And they were not at all interested in the cult of any kind, right? They were just not keen to be treated as extra special human beings or some kind of messenger of God as long as they were alive. But then after they were gone, naturally it was just a matter of time that their followers started the whole cult movement in their name, and it was bound to create differences between and this was and I have also said during this chapter that the induction of women into their their ashram, or for that matter as disciples, was also one of the or the position of women was also one of the very important factor which created differences because the purists even within Buddhism were not at all in favor of inducting women into the different vihars, and they were not at all interested in the tradition of bhikshunis. They were just okay with the fact that there should be bhikshus, there should be men who would lead a celibate life, and of course they would be devoting their life to God, right? And that's what they would be satisfied with, and that's what they wanted to be. But then there was a certain set of people who wanted women to be inducted because they felt that yes, women could be as great spiritual masters and they were as good a spiritual being, and so they should not be discriminated against. Now this was the same thing, students, very interestingly and unfortunately rather, whichever way you look at it and whom you ask, it depends. The division happened with Jainism after Vardhaman Mahavira was gone, because once he was gone, then naturally his adherents, it was just a matter of about 100 years when they also got divided into the Shvetambara and Digambara sect of Jainism, because they could also not agree on many things, the followers, because the main binding factor, Vardhaman Mahavira, the undisputed teacher or leader of Jains, once he was gone, as long as he was alive, no one would dare question his authority or whatever he was saying, right? But once he was gone, then the other gurus were there, and then the different gurus had their different disciples, and then different groups came up, and the different people wanted to go with different people with different teachers, and then because they believed in certain things, the others did not believe in certain, because now there was no undisputed authority within Jainism or Buddhism for that matter. And that is why again the Jainism also got divided into Shvetambara and Digambara, where the Shvetambaras happen to be the liberal sect of Jains, and the Digambaras happen to be far more orthodox and conservative and very purists, you can call the Digambaras, because the Digambaras also believe that women do not are just not, in fact they take it to another level, whereby the Digambaras believe that women just cannot achieve salvation at all. First they have to be born as a man, and only then only men can achieve salvation. So Digambaras take it to another level, and it is the Digambaras who see the saints of Digambara sect of Jainism. You see them without clothes. The Shvetambara sect, the teachers of Shvetambara sect, you see them with all those white robes, cotton robes, and they have that canvas cloth around their nose and all of that. You see, they are the Shvetambara gurus, but the Digambara gurus, they are far more orthodox and conservative, and they do not wear any clothes. They do not. They carry. They, in fact, the guys, to kind of stretch it a bit. The Digambara gurus can carry only, they are allowed to carry only three things: their religious books, a small fan, that is, which you, then the manual fan, of course, which is made of peacock feather, and the third thing is a small, you can call the pot where which can be used to carry drinking water, and that is it. These are the only three things allowed to the teacher of Digambara sect of Buddhism, while the Shvetambara Buddhists, I'm sorry, Jain gurus can carry a lot of different kind of stuffs. They can carry a whole lot of stuff. They are allowed about 13, 14 things to carry. So that is how it was, the Digambara sect happened, then Mahayana Hinayana happened. So everything, the division happened once the great teachers were gone. Now, coming to the another topic, that is the growth of Puranic Hinduism. So, all the religions were going through a churning activity where nothing was static, nothing was stable. The things were moving in different directions. There was a whole cycle that was on. So the notion of a savior was not unique to Buddhism. So, that's what it was. We find different similar ideas being developed in different ways within traditions that we now consider part of Hinduism, which included Vaishnavism as form of Hinduism, where Lord Vishnu was once worshipped as the principal deity, and the Shaivism, a tradition within which Shiva was considered as the chief god, in which there was growing emphasis on the worship of a chosen deity. In such worship, the bond between the devotee and the god was visualized as one of the pure devotion or bhakti. In case of Vaishnavism, cults developed around various avatars or incarnations of the deity. The 10 avatars were recognized within the tradition. These were forms that the deity was believed to have assumed in order to save the world whenever it was threatened by disorder and destruction because of the dominance of evil forces. It was likely that different avatars were popular in different parts of the country. Recognizing each of these local deities as a form of Vishnu was one way of creating a more unified religious tradition. Students, but you also have to understand one very important thing. Of course, you understood what I read, that, because these are the whole Sanatan Dharam is about the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. Brahma happens to be the creator, so naturally, once he has created everything, we are human beings after all. Once he has created everything, we say thank you, thank you, thank you very much. So we have no time for Lord Brahma anymore, because we thank him for whatever he has done, and so that is where the story ends. The real masala starts about how the Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva, because Vishnu happens to be the one who is responsible for running the universe. So naturally, if he is running the universe, I have to be in his good books, because if if dare I not be in his good books, otherwise the whole uh, misfortune, I'm very fearful about that the whole misfortune would fall upon me, because Vishnu happens to be the one who really happens to be the CEO, literally, if I can put it, of the universe. So naturally, I do not dare antagonize him. And of course, Lord Shiva, who happens to be the destroyer. So now I definitely do not want the whole universe to get destroyed. I do not want a Terminator within the ranks. I definitely do not want to anger the Terminator. He is literally the Terminator in the modern sense. So naturally, I have to keep him in good humor as well. So these are the most important gods of in within the Hindu hierarchy, and that is how it has been. And in the case of Vaishnavism, and you have to understand, students, because Vishnu happens to be the one who runs this universe, so naturally he is the one in he has to run it in different ways, and different yugas he has taken different avatars to run this. Definitely something which Shiva does not, Lord Shiva does not, Shivji does not, because of the one simple reason that he is the destroyer. He can do it on his own, and in different ways he can do it on his own. He doesn't need avatars as much as Lord Vishnu does, because Lord Vishnu at different yugas, when you talk about the Sat Yuga, when you talk about the Treta Yuga, and the Dwapar Yuga, and the Kal Yuga, naturally there are different yugs whereby Lord Vishnu has to run this whole place, the universe that he is responsible to manage. So naturally, he takes different forms. So this is what this is about, the growth of Puranic Hinduism. And when you talk about all these responsibilities, you just cannot omit and ignore the institution of God as the supreme being, or the supreme father, or the most powerful entity which which exists in universe. So some of these forms were represented in sculptures as well as other deities. Shiva, for instance, was symbolized by the linga that we call Shivling, although he was occasionally represented in human form too. All such representations depicted a complex set of ideas about the deities and their attributes through. But students, you have to understand one very I really wish we were in class and I could have shown you on the board, but just to put it but just to kind of compress it, but I don't think I even have the time to compress it. So to understand, so I'll continue with the paragraphs. To understand the meaning of these sculptures, historians have to be familiar with the stories behind them, many of which were contained in the Puranas compiled by Brahmins by about middle of the first millennium, after that is about 1000 AD, that is 1000 years, our first millennia, that would mean about 1000 years after the death of Christ. They contain much that had been composed and been in circulation for centuries, including stories about gods and goddesses. Generally, they were written in simple Sanskrit verse and were meant to be read aloud to everybody, including women and the Shudras who did not have access to Vedic learning. So you have to understand that at that point in time, it was not that the Shudras or the people of the lower caste would not have access to the great learning and the great devotional spiritual secrets which were there in the Vedas and Purans. So much of what is contained in the Purans evolved through interaction among people, priests, merchants, ordinary men, women, who travel from place to place sharing ideas and beliefs. We know, for instance, that Vasudeva Krishna was an important deity in the Mathura region. Over centuries, his worship spread in other parts of the country as well. As we all know, students, that Lord Krishna happens to be the real popular guy, the real rock star, if I can call, of among all the other Hindu gods, right? Because his anything that is related to Lord Krishna is celebrated with great devotion and religious fervor. So we shall continue tomorrow. Thanks.